All right, I'm gonna keep running with it. So I didn't mean to be disrespectful or distasteful with any of the last video, and I was actually attempting some a little bit nuanced and actually some heavy statements, but also some to highlight some principles that are at play at that to for the purpose of understanding the truth. That's the purpose of the content that I come with on this channel. Even the musical content is for the greater purpose of understanding and truth. When you do things like worship, they help you understand yourself and others and your experience in your right relationship and standing to other people. That's actually what you're referring to when you say peace. According to um, uh, uh, um, Arthur Avalon, is that when you come into right relationship with other people, that is right standing, that is right relationship, but relationship informs the standing. That's the closest we're getting to peace, and that would require economics. To my case, you would actually need economic equity. That doesn't mean parity. Parity is evenness. You will have more contribution from some different strengths, different needs, and actually a different amount of like privilege, frankly speaking. So you have a child and you're out there busting it all day long, and your child may do some things like chores and schoolwork and some things, but by and large they get to play and enjoy themselves. And maybe your wife or your significant other, they do work also, but not necessarily construction work like what you do, or they have different everyone has different sufferings and enjoyment in this life, and different strengths and different leniencies and actually privileges and graces that afford the leeway to be healthy and enjoy life. So you will always have privilege with human beings, and you will always have maybe a higher or lesser degree of enjoyment, even where you busting it. But there's actually enjoyment and meaning in creating value. According to Nassim Nicholas Taleb, great men of other cultures, like going back, a lot of the cultures that we somewhat borrow from and stand on the shoulders of, at least as like the Middle East would go in, like the Judeo-Christian cultures, as they reference and borrow from the Abrahamic and Islamic and Jewish cultures. I actually don't have a full grasp of the Middle East going back, but I know that you have some outstanding great cultures and class and taste and etiquette and history and loving and sacrifice and worship. But they, to them, the highest wealth is the ability to benefit, to bestow blessings and gifts and benefits and privileges, maybe even titles on other people. To give is greater to receive, and is a greater standing to give than to receive. Is the greater wealth is to give. But you will always have some people that have it a little bit harder or worse than others, even as we're doing the best with and by and for each other. But as the Western society goes, Western societies that are that are understudies and byproducts and function and maybe still attendant of feudalism, industrialism, sharecropping, Jim Crow, capitalism, digitalism. Now, these are part of you will have a class with human beings. You will have a class structure. That's not necessarily bad, but it can be bad. The Some of the greatest art, literature, spirituality would be like around India. I've appreciated, according to Arthur Avalon, a student of religion would be benefited and would be well suited and at home studying the history and traditions of India, because you would have a great diverse representation of both spirituality and philosophy as in love of wisdom, not necessarily incredibly sophisticated or obtuse or transcendent in itself. Just the love of wisdom is philosophy, and you have a lot of that in India, in true etiquette and class and sacrifice and loyalty and transcendence along upright conduct par excellence in Indian culture. But you also do have the class structure, like the Brahmins, which would be like the priest class, the Kshatriyas, the warrior class. I think it's something with the V is the business class. That's like a householder. Someone, actually, if you own your own home, you have a roof over your head and a family to support. That would make you a householder, similar to a businessman, because you're actually a lot of us are actually businessmen and women, whether we appreciate that in modern society, as we ostensibly seek to be householders and have a roof over our head. In Western society, that's the main objective in Western society, is to have a roof over your head. That is to be a householder. That is to be a businessman or woman, or be under a businessman or woman. And so whether you're any degree of that, a very humble person or entrepreneur, you're still a businessman. and there are certain strengths and also limitations with that standpoint and position and approach to life, and you are to be respected, but you are also to respect others for their place according to that. And then so you would have like, I actually don't know where a sadhu would feature within that. That's like a person, or like a so there you would have like a renunciate, or a what's the word for it, a there's a sadhaka would be said I think a sadhaka would be someone that does sadhana, a sid sadhu, like a spiritual quest. But then you would have a there's a word for renunciate. Osho would use that word a lot. He would refer to his students sometimes a little bit, I think it might have been a little bit lightly, even a little bit, dare I say, arbitrary, that he would apply that to them because they were still inside of doors and with the amenities of Western society. But it was there's a word for when you're a spiritual seeker, and you've assumed that stance in bearing an actual title, because you're entitled to certain things as a seeker. When you go abroad, you're without means because of your approach. You are entitled certain support. That's similar now, where sometimes when I appear places with a guitar on my lap, people, particularly women and young people, but particularly women, they will give of themselves to tip a person for playing music, or to help you with food. That's a deep thing, deeper than our modern society. And it's actually when I'm appearing somewhere, like say with long hair, a little bit unkept, but still, that long hair, it would speak on a subliminal pre-civil, maybe along the lines of human experience. When I appear someone with a guitar, content to not have a roof over my head, that would reflect and be reminiscent of a spiritual seeker in human society's past. And such a person would be entitled to the alms of someone that they would come across, because were you to disrespect or ignore a person like that, that person is actually doing spiritual work on behalf of what it is to exist in a community that would benefit from that, by them taking that stance and the hardship that would come with that. So to mock or sneer or affront or ignore someone like that actually constitutes a disgrace to a person that would approach that. So it said that when you go past a person begging alms and you ignore them, you actually forfeit your standing, and indirectly your own profit and fortune, by a method of cause and effect, where you should do something as distasteful and egregious historically as to walk past or sneer or mock a spiritual seeker. But um but so that spiritual seeker, there's a word that what is that, I can't think of it off the top of my head, that Osho would refer to his students, who had been, like, a lot of them were eminent doctors, lawyers, scientists, professionals, and well-to-do people, maybe landed people with inheritance wealth, that would spend time listening to him, and they were content, or they would flirt with the idea of dispensing with their holding and standing to actually undergo the rigors, because it's not easy, of spiritual lessons, and to live those out and practice those. That's what he was supporting people and encouraging people to do, but it's a little bit nuanced and sophisticated in a modern Western context. But that would be another station. But then they also had the untouchables, which were like the Sudras, I think, and that's the Sudras. I think that they're actually related to the Gypsy people of southern India. There's a relationship between the Gypsy people. The Gypsy people emanate from India, is my understanding, but then the Gypsy people have a presence of around the world, the Europe, especially in the Americas, like maybe more the Southern America, South America, and they have received a similar treatment anywhere they go as the untouchables in Europe, as in India. But they're also deeply musical, as India, southern India has a deep music, northern and southern India have deep yet respective musical histories, is my understanding. But I would imagine that the untouchables would have a deep relationship with music, as do the gypsies, because when you're put on your heels, you're stripped of your humanity, yet you remain a human, and you have the same instincts for socializing as other people would. You have nothing left but to be an artist, an instrument of music. So I met a gypsy man working about maybe 10 years ago, who inspired me as a musician, who would steal 5 minutes at a time a day to do music, and actually that got me on the path to studying music. And then I actually became, the only instrument that I had success with was the Spanish guitar, classical guitar, reminiscent of gypsy people. And I wanted to point that out, but I got more content with this.